we would like to add in the active learning, there are three major findings, right? The metacognition, conceptual framework, and the alternate conception. Like metacognition, we have the student already have the idea before they come in for the lecture. I think we have to.
Sorry, this is the second one. Could you repeat that?
Repeat the second
The
one, please.
active learning, which is divided into three: the metacognition, conceptual framework, alternate conception.
So, three major points of how people learn.
How people learn it, these are the three major findings.
Thank you very much. Okay, and our final.
I guess final group will be the worst. We have two under the subject matter of responsible science. We learn something about the culture, change of culture in research, a misconception of the whatever in Malaysia. We know exactly the culture when the lab is producing something. Everyone's supposed to everyone's supposed to be in that particular paper. That is the culture. But we are learning, but I believe everyone in the lab is actually agreed that not everyone in the lab is actually supposed to be in that particular paper. So that will be a culture that we have to try to implement to everyone in the lab. For those who have the very low contribution or only supply the sample is actually put under acknowledgement, not the one of the authors. The second one, we learn something on the setup guideline on responsible science. For as we know that we don't really have a very specific guideline for so many things in Malaysia. So this is something that we can bring back home and put in a line for a very good guideline to everyone to follow.
So this group obviously had the hardest job because they had to come up with two new things after doing everything else. So congratulations. So before we go on, what I want to do is just take about 2 or 3 minutes, and if now, as a result of hearing all of the presentations, you have a brilliant idea that just has to come out, let us know about it. And I'll bring the microphone around. What other things would you like to see on this list before we start voting? We can maybe put up a couple more. Anything else? Thinking as a responsible scientist, using active learning and teaching, high-tech versus low-tech use of pedagogical tools, setting goals and objectives, peer teaching, the importance of understanding the principles of how people learn, and the notion of misconceptions in research, particularly around things like authorship. In other words, there are standards that are being established that can be very helpful in deciding who's an author, for example, who's not. And then also general guidelines for responsible science. Anybody else have anything else that they would like to contribute?
I have a small point probably to add to those lists already outlined. I think personally, for knowledge to be useful, it has to be shared and transferred. Like you started by thinking as a responsible scientist, and then everything will hopefully fall into place. And then you have how you learn, which is active learning, and then you look at how people learn. But then all of this knowledge, for it to be impactful and for it to have impacts to the community and society and for yourself as well as the teacher, it has to be shared and transferred, I think, just like what you are doing with us now. You're transferring your knowledge to us, and then we would be transferring this knowledge to our students. So I think that is an important point.
Thank you very much. So we're going to put on here transfer of knowledge and conceptual understanding, I think is what you're saying, because what we talked about is the fact that you can have a lot of information. The difference between a novice in something and an expert in something is not necessarily the amount of information that they have, but how they use that information, how they're able to take one piece of information and connect it to a new piece of information that novices can't do. Okay, so that's really important. And developing that kind of framework for moving people in things like responsible conduct of science from being novices toward more expertise and engaging them in the ways that we've tried to engage you can be really one of the ways forward, because now it's not just something you have to memorize and then you check off the list saying that you're able to do this. You've actually engaged with the issues. And as Liz pointed out yesterday, many of these things are not yes or no answers. They're very, very complicated. And having the ability to engage your students and your colleagues in these kinds of issues and make collective decisions about what is right is critically important. And then understanding what the rest of the world has been saying about these things. Okay, thank you. Jim.
When I look at the list, I see how you want to do it. Can you think a bit about what you want to do? You want to talk about responsible conduct of science. What do you think ought to be involved in responsible conduct of science? So what do you see, what is it that you want to do in addition to how you want to do it?
Okay, so again, this is a good point, let me remind you of the process here. What we would like is one person from each of your group to actually put the posters up, because they're also good, and this way we can share all of them and all the things that we not necessarily discussed. We want you then as individuals to come, and we have 5 votes. And what we want you to do is to put check marks next to the 5 most important things on this list so that we can begin to prioritize. Then Dominique is going to be talking about some of the work that's already been going on. We'll have a break, and then we're going to do the things that Jim was talking about. Where do we go from here? How do we begin to think about changing things, and what is it that we want to change? So it's both the what and the how. Okay? So, everybody get up.
Yeah, but Jay, as I look at the list, I see lots of how. I don't see much what. So I'm asking them to also put some what on the list.
So you want to add some, if you want to add some additional things.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you want to do?
Yes.
Dual use.
Dual use, okay. Thank you. The importance of dual use, yes.
Just to highlight 2 points for the consideration of the members. The first thing, I think we talk about the culture, because sometimes in the labs we'll thought that the culture is the senior said, when you publish a paper you should have a name of all of us, So there's not a misuse of power by the main supervisors, but it's just the culture in the labs. They thought this is a practice all the way. So I think something about the culture has to be addressed. And the other thing is about potential use of this. I think yesterday we learned about the responsible science and so on. For me, there's a subject matter, and also about the tool. That's actually the tool. So the subject matter and tool there's a very potential that they can use in different areas. For example, the subject matter is bioethics, but you can change the subject matter in a different subject matter, but we apply the same tool. Or the other way around, we can fix the subject matter, which is the responsible science, but the tool can be different. Yesterday the tool we did executive learning. So I think based on this subject matter and the tool, it's very potential for us to utilize what we have learned yesterday into different, like what you said, what are the aspects, what are we use and so on.
Thank you. So the what's can be things like curriculum, and the tools can be the kinds of active learning that we've done here. And again, these are things that you'll have opportunities to think about afterwards. Leah?
I think your point about cultures, which are not only nation-specific sometimes, but they're also laboratory-specific, and they're also discipline-specific, is very important. So, but there is not one good way of doing it and not one standard that applies to everything. So for instance, in physics, it's more and more common to have hundreds of names on a paper, all right? And that is not an illegitimate practice, but it does sort of compete against the notion that every author needs to be responsible for everything that is on a paper. Because it's a legitimate question to ask, how can one be responsible for things that have been done by hundreds of authors? Where are these authors? They are in different parts of the globe. They are in different laboratories that collaborate with each other. You know, these are international projects. How can one be responsible? But that doesn't mean that the paper is not a good paper. But these are different things that have been coming up as data is bigger, as we get more collaborations. And so when one thinks about frameworks, these come into play. And so this is one of the things that, you know, maybe your laboratory, your institution, your discipline will have to, you know, to grapple with.
Thank you. And as I said, when we start working after the main has his discussion, one of the things that we're going to be asking you to think about are different levels or units of analysis. One of them can be your own lab. And how do you actually begin to personalize this and bring it to your lab and change the culture of what it is that you do there? A second level is what is it that can happen at your university so that people from different disciplines who are doing different kinds of things, who have different expectations, can come together and make decisions about what constitutes responsibility and what is the university's responsibility to prevent plagiarism, for example. Okay? And then at the national level, how can universities begin to work together to begin to affect the policies that are governing responsible conduct or not governing them at this point? So those are the things that we're going to work on in the final session. And what I want to do now is allow you to come up and vote. Let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll have the main talk, and then we'll come back to this. Okay? So get up and stretch, come over and vote on the things. And if you want to add anything more over here that Alistair said, please feel free to do so.
What do you want it to go like vote number?
Check mark. All we want is a check mark. You have 5 check marks that you can put up. And what we want to see are which are the top 5 that are coming up. Yeah, just check 5 that you think are most important. Yeah. Everybody.